People used to treat me like I was nothing, just a shadow sweeping through their lives, invisible and inconsequential. But what I experienced that day at First Capital Bank shattered any delusions I had about remaining unnoticed. Dressed in a janitor's uniform, I walked in with the weight of my family's needs pressing on my shoulders, my father's funeral expenses looming like a dark cloud. When I approached the counter to withdraw funds, the air thickened with tension. The bank teller, Belle, offered a smile that felt more like a sneer. As I stood there, her condescending tone dripped with prejudice. Then, in an almost theatrical display, Belle spilled the cash she handed me, much to the indifference of the well-dressed patrons around us. My heart dropped, not just from humiliation, but from the burning resolve igniting within me. I could either crumble under the weight of their judgment or find my voice in the silence. I chose the latter. To little did I know, a man in a charcoal suit was watching, my secret ally. As I left, I documented my emotions, mirroring the sharpness of my anger with a calming determination. When Rosa Martinez, one of the bank's employees, reached out with the security footage, I knew this was my moment. I had been overlooked, but I was ready to command respect, to confront my oppressors, not with mindless rage, but with quiet strength and calculated strategy. The bank would rue the day they disrespected me, and my journey toward justice would begin. Maya stood at the First Capital Bank's counter, her hands trembling slightly as she slid the cash withdrawal slip across to Belle, the bank teller. The fluorescent lights gleamed harshly on Belle's perfectly manicured nails, and her expression hardened, a silent judgment written all over her face. "Excuse me? What are you doing here?" Belle's voice dripped with condescension. "We don't provide services for people like you." Clenching her prized her sides. "I'm here to help my family, ma'am. This is important." Belle's lips curled into a mocking smile as she processed the transaction. Then, without warning, she knocked the cash off the counter. The bills fluttered to the marbled floor like so many discarded dreams. "Oops," Belle said, her tone laced with a smirk. By the scattered cash, onlookers merely glanced away, pretending not to witness the humiliation unfolding. Maya closed her eyes for a brief moment, fighting to keep her composure. "I just need to help my family. They're counting on me." "Prosecute count on someone who's actually qualified," Belle jabbed, eyes gleaming as she turned to her coworkers, their laughter echoing across the polished atrium. A man in a charcoal suit observed quietly from a distance, brow furrowed as he shook his head at the spectacle. The bank, Maya held back tears, each step echoing her resolve. The world saw her as invisible and unworthy, but inside a fire ignited. She would show them. She would not shrink away. The towering glass facade of First Capital Bank loomed over her as she entered, the sterile scent of antiseptic mingling with polished wood. Mariah, the young black janitor, had always kept her head down, focusing on her tasks. But today felt different. Her heart raced with the weight of her mission, to withdraw the last of her father's savings for her family. A bittersweet reminder of the struggle they faced after his passing. As she approached the counter, the bank teller, Belle, barely looked up, her eyes scanning Mariah dismissively. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone flat. Mariah's quiet resolve threatened to shatter. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please," she replied, forcing her voice steady, despite the simmering sting of disrespect. But then, in a splash of shock, Belle fumbled the cash, letting bills cascade to the floor. The dry laughter of bystanders felt like a weight on Mariah's chest. She knelt to gather the scattered money, a cruel joke unfolding, yet she held her breath, trapped between dignity and indignation. She could hear the distant hum of the air conditioner. It was deafening. As the scene unfolded, Mariah caught a glimpse of a man in a charcoal suit, observing with an unreadable expression. After the humiliation, she stepped outside, the world around her receding into hazy whispers. Alone, she allowed the tears to flow, the frustration thickening into a resolute fire within her. Days later, when Rosa, a sympathetic bank employee, reached out with evidence of the incident, everything shifted. No longer would she endure in silence. As she stood before the bank once more, her heart steady with purpose, Mariah knew it was time to wield her quiet strength. Rosa stood outside First Capital Bank, her heart racing but her mind clear. The humiliating encounter with the teller, Belle, stung yet ignited a fire in her. No more shrinking back. She tapped her phone, quickly gathering her thoughts. Today wasn't just another day, it was the beginning of her reclamation. Inside the bank, the familiar sterile scent clashed with her newfound determination. She inhaled deeply, scanning the room for Belle. Standing straight, she approached the counter where Belle was busy pretending to assist another customer. "Excuse me," Rosa said, her voice steady. "I think it's time we talk." Belle's head snapped up, surprise fleeting across her face. "What do you mean?" Constituted smiled, a flicker of confidence lighting her eyes. "I believe I've got a few things to discuss regarding that incident last week. I have evidence that might interest you." Before Belle could respond, the charcoal-suited man she had sensed watching her earlier stepped forward. "I think that's a conversation worth having," he added, his tone assertive. Rosa's heart swelled. It was a small victory, but it was enough. "Let's discuss how we can change this," Rosa continued, standing a bit taller. "Respect isn't optional." The whispers around the bank surged, her quiet confidence piercing through the atmosphere like a beacon. Shortly after, she returned with her legal team, reporters trailing behind. Confronting the management, she laid out her case, articulating the need for systemic change. "I won't just stand by," she declared, grounding herself. "This ends here. Change will happen, and it starts today." Words echoed as a powerful reminder of what can bloom from courage, illuminating the path for those around her. It was only the beginning. In the bustling lobby of First Capital Bank, Lila's heart raced as she approached the counter, clutching the small withdrawal slip. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting a harsh glare across her face. The bank teller, Belle, barely glanced up, her expression a blend of indifference and condescension, an unspoken prejudice hanging in the air. With a barely audible scoff, Belle took the cash, but as she handed it back, she fumbled intentionally, scattering bills across the polished marble floor. A wave of heat rushed to Lila's cheeks as bystanders glanced away, shuffling their feet, avoiding the moment like it was an enraged dog. Humiliated, but resolute, Lila knelt down, her hands shaking slightly as she gathered the bills. This wasn't just about the money, it was about a father's legacy, a family's survival. As Lila exited the bank, she caught sight of a man in a charcoal suit, his expression serious as he observed the chaos. Little did she know, he was not just another passerby. He was an investor with an eye on social justice, a chance to rewrite the narrative. Take later, armed with evidence from Rosa, an insider heartened by Lila's strength, the young janitor returned to the bank, flanked by her legal team and reporters. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Lila, standing taller now, faced Belle, whose face flushed crimson as the footage played, a silent film exposing her malice. The room went silent, tension snapping like a rubber band. "This is not just about me," Lila declared, voice steady, cutting through the collective shock. "This is about respect." The words echoed, commanding the space as if she were pulling strings of fate. Barely weeks later, the security footage leaked, igniting a public outcry. Belle's career crumbled amidst shame. Whispers of the CEO's resignation filled the air. As Lila watched the news unfold, she felt a swell of pride, not for vengeance, but for justice. A quiet achievement that resonated far deeper than anyone could fathom. In her community, she became an inspiration, not just for her triumph, but for the shared strength ignited in those around her. Lila smiled softly, knowing she transformed a moment of personal humiliation into a movement for change. Silence turned into strength, and her journey began to ripple through the hearts of many. As I look back on that day at First Capital Bank, I feel a mixture of pride and sorrow. The humiliation I faced at the hands of Belle, the bank teller, was a moment that strained my resolve. But amid the stares and whispers, something deeper stirred within me, a quiet strength. I chose not to react in anger. Instead, I harnessed my energy into a greater purpose. The events that followed unfolded in unexpected ways. I never envisioned that my actions would ripple through the company, prompting change in policies and leaving a mark far beyond my initial intent. Rosa's rise from an overlooked employee to a full-time analyst is a testament to this. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where respect was stripped away? Did you rise to the occasion or slip quietly into the shadows? I invite you to share your experiences. Let's discuss what power looks like when confronted with bias and injustice. Your voice matters. Comment below with your thoughts.